Have you ever felt like letting go of everything? When exhaustion takes over and every reason to keep going fades away under invisible pressure? That is the exact moment when the truth is revealed. We often mistakenly believe that discipline is simply the ability to work hard when we feel inspired. But in reality, self-discipline does not begin when everything is easy. It only truly appears at the very moment you most want to quit, yet still firmly choose to move forward. In a world full of turbulence, where external chaos can easily crush any mind that is not prepared, the mindset of Stoicism does not teach us how to control the world, but how to master the only territory that truly belongs to us, the mind. This is not a battle to avoid or deny emotion, but a journey of forging mental strength so you can stand firm in the storm and become unshakable in spirit. The core difference between motivation versus discipline is that motivation is just a fleeting spark, while discipline is the enduring torch that guides us through the darkness of doubt. Emperor Marcus Aurelius, a great symbol of Stoicism, once wrote in long, solitary nights to remind himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That line is not just a reminder from ancient times. It is the key that unlocks the door to self-mastery, helping you find inner peace right in the midst of the noise of modern life. Today, we are not here to talk about empty to-do lists. We are here to dive deep into the 7 hidden laws of a resilient inner world, where you will discover the quiet power to build a meaningful life that cannot be conquered. Welcome to the journey of decoding the 7 hidden laws of self-mastery, a mental framework that helps transform everyday chaos into unshakable inner order. Today, we're not just talking about forcing yourself to do hard things. We're going to explore the art of self-mastery, the ability to truly own yourself so you can attain real freedom. This is where the philosophy of Stoicism comes in to illuminate the path we walk. Stoics never tried to control the ever-changing world outside, because they understood that the only place where they hold absolute power is their inner world. Self-discipline, in its deepest sense, is the process of becoming mentally unshakable. It is not about running away from pressure or avoiding the chaos of modern life, but about learning how to rise above it. In today's world, where we are constantly surrounded by technological distractions, social pressure, and instant temptations, these ancient teachings have become more relevant and urgent than ever. We are living in an era where the ability to maintain focus has become a luxury, and inner peace seems like a distant destination. Many of us are constantly confused in the battle between motivation versus discipline. We wait for inspiration to begin, wait for a perfect day to change. But we forget that inspiration is just a sudden visitor, while discipline is the loyal companion that never leaves our side. This video will help you clearly distinguish between those two concepts and offer you a long-term vision so that you no longer get lost in short-term desires. In the next few minutes, we will break down 7 core principles, from the law of inner command, which helps you win the battle every morning, to the law of sacred routine, which turns small actions into your personal identity, and the law of energy preservation, which teaches you how to invest your attention wisely. Our goal is not just to help you control your emotions, but to build a daily routine that consistently nurtures your mental strength. This journey will equip you with an invisible yet incredibly powerful weapon: quiet power. It is the strength of calmness, of knowing who you are and where you are going. Prepare yourself to receive these lessons not as dry theories, but as practical tools for personal growth and for building a life worth living. A life where you can find stillness right in the eye of the storm. To truly grasp the weight of the principles of self-discipline that we're about to unpack, we need to turn back the clock and return to the roots where these ideas first took hold. These concepts were not born in the comfort of philosophy classrooms or modern self-help books. They were forged and refined in the midst of some of the most brutal upheavals in human history. Stoicism, or the Stoic philosophy, emerged in Greece and flourished in ancient Rome, an era marked by endless wars, devastating plagues, and ruthless political shifts. It was precisely in that extreme chaos that people were forced to seek a solid spiritual anchor, an inner fortress of peace that could not be invaded, built right within their own consciousness. Picture Epictetus, a philosopher born into slavery, his body chained and subjected to physical pain, yet his mind held an absolute freedom that no tyrant could ever steal. Or Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful emperor of the Western world at the time, who held the lives of tens of thousands in his hands, yet chose a life of austerity and strict discipline. In his classic work, Meditations, a private journal written in the midst of bloody military campaigns, he recorded deeply troubled inner monologues about responsibility, impermanence, and how to maintain virtue in the midst of filth and corruption. For them, mental strength was not an intellectual ornament to show off, but an essential tool for survival. They understood a profound truth. The external world is always full of unpredictable events, and trying to control it is a hopeless, even insane, endeavor. Instead, the Stoics chose to turn inward, focusing all their energy on self-mastery, the only place where they truly held power. They taught us that suffering does not come from events themselves, but from the way we judge and react to those events. Their philosophy became the early foundation of emotional control, helping human beings separate themselves from impulsive reactions so they could find the stillness needed for wisdom to take root. Today, even though we no longer face arenas of life and death combat or bloody conquests, the inner battle between instant desires and long-term goals is just as intense. The invisible pressure of modern life demands that we equip ourselves with a form of quiet power, so we don't get swept away by the relentless current of the world. It is from this rich historical soil, filled with humanity and philosophical depth, that the 7 hidden laws of discipline were distilled. They do not exist to punish or restrict us, but to free us from being enslaved by fleeting emotions, guiding us toward a journey of personal growth that is sustainable, profound, and deeply meaningful. We begin the journey of building your inner world by laying down the very first foundation, the place where all great victories are born, the law of inner command. To truly understand this law, we need to look straight into the nature of the human mind. Inside each of us, there is a constant, wordless dialogue, a negotiation that takes place from the moment we open our eyes in the morning until we fall asleep at night. It is a silent war between 2 forces. On one side is your biological instinct, always craving comfort, safety, and the avoidance of pain. On the other side is your rational mind, the place where your highest aspirations and the vision of the person you want to become live. The law of inner command is not about destroying instinct, but about re-establishing the hierarchy of power, where reason assumes the role of supreme commander. The core definition of this law is simple, but brutal. Self-discipline is the ability to keep the promises you make to yourself, even when, and especially when, your emotions are screaming in protest. Let's carefully examine one of the most dangerous misunderstandings we often fall into in modern society: the debate between motivation versus discipline. We tend to believe that action must be sparked by a feeling of excitement or burning motivation. We wait for the right moment. We wait to feel like it. But the law of inner command states clearly that emotions are unreliable indicators. If you only act when you feel motivated, you are handing control of your life over to temporary chemical fluctuations in your brain. In contrast, those who possess self-mastery understand that action must come before emotion. You don't wait until you feel like working out to put your shoes on. You put your shoes on, and the feeling of motivation may come after. Or it may not, but that doesn't matter, because the mission is already completed. This law demands that you separate the you who observes from the noisy voices of procrastination. When the alarm rings in the morning, it is not just a signal that a new day has begun. It is the opening gunshot of the first battle. A part of you will whisper, "Just 5 more minutes. It's too cold today. I deserve some rest." If you compromise, you're not just losing 5 minutes. You are training your brain to accept defeat. You are sending a message into your subconscious that says, "What I promise myself doesn't really matter." In contrast, when you enforce the law of inner command, you get up despite the resistance of your body. That action is not just compliance, it is a declaration of sovereignty. You are telling yourself, "I give the orders here, and this body obeys." This is the foundation of mental strength. The ability to force yourself to do what is necessary, regardless of how you feel in the moment. However, the ability to command yourself into action, attack, is only half of the equation. To reach a state of balance and inner invincibility, we need the second piece of the puzzle. A law that is defensive in nature, but incredibly powerful. The law of strategic restraint. If the law of inner command is the sharp sword that drives you forward, then the law of strategic restraint is the solid shield that protects you from the chaos of the outside world. In a noisy era, where every event, every social media post, and every provocation is designed to trigger your instant reaction, the ability to hold yourself back is the highest expression of strength. Restraint, in the context of Stoicism, never means suppressing toxic emotions in a weak, passive way. On the contrary, it is a master-level strategy of emotional control. It comes from the recognition that you cannot control what others say or do to you, but you have absolute power over how you choose to respond. When someone insults you, when a plan falls apart, or when traffic comes to a standstill, the natural reaction is anger, complaining, or anxiety. That is the reflex of an animal cornered against the wall. But someone who practices the law of strategic restraint will choose another path, the path of silence and observation. This restraint creates a precious space, a buffer between stimulus and response. Inside that buffer, quiet power is born. When you choose not to react immediately, you become unpredictable and hard to manipulate. You preserve the energy that most people waste on meaningless outbursts. You choose silence, not because you have nothing to say, but because you understand that silence sometimes carries more weight than 1,000 loud arguments. This is deliberate self-control. You decide when, where, and how to respond, instead of letting the outside world pull your strings like a puppet. These two laws, inner command and strategic restraint, operate together like two sides of the same coin. One side pushes you to act beyond inertia to achieve personal growth. The other keeps you steady in the storms of emotion to protect your inner peace. When you combine them, you begin to build an inner citadel. You are no longer a slave to impulsive urges. You are no longer a victim of circumstances. You start to develop a long-term vision, where every action in your day is guided by will, not randomness. You learn to find stillness right in the middle of a hectic life, not by running away to a mountain, but by creating a disciplined order within your own mind. Practicing these two laws requires a high level of awareness. It demands that you constantly monitor your own command center. Whenever you feel laziness creeping in, the absence of inner command, or anger exploding, the absence of strategic restraint, remember that these are opportunities to train. Real strength is not measured by what you display on the outside, but by the silent battles you win on the inside. It is the moment you choose to do the hard thing when no one is watching, and the moment you choose to smile calmly when the whole world expects you to explode. That is the essence of a resilient inner life, a state of discipline elevated into an art of living. The theory of inner control always sounds heroic and poetic when we're sitting in a quiet room, reading a good book, or listening to words like these. However, the map is not the territory. The raw truth of self-discipline doesn't live on the pages of a book. It lives right at the muddiest, most difficult crossroads of real life, where reason and instinct collide brutally. To truly activate the law of inner command and the law of strategic restraint, we need to step into specific situations where the battle for self-mastery is fought most fiercely. Let's start with a familiar scenario that is, in fact, the most accurate measurement of your mental strength. The 5 a.m. moment. Picture yourself lying in a dark room, the air outside cold and sharp, while your bed is as warm and protective as a cocoon. The alarm goes off, tearing through the silence. Instantly, an internal negotiation begins. This is not a fair discussion. It's a full-scale assault from the voice of comfort. It whispers sweet, persuasive lines into your ear. You worked too hard yesterday. 10 more minutes of sleep won't hurt anyone. Or your body needs rest to recover. In that moment, motivation versus discipline becomes two clearly separated fronts. Motivation died the moment the alarm rang. It abandoned you. Only discipline remains, standing there, cold and demanding. If you apply the law of inner command, you don't argue back with that voice. You understand that debating with your own weakness means you've already lost half the battle. Instead, you take one decisive physical action. You throw off the blanket and put your feet on the cold floor. No thinking, no hesitating, no negotiating. This action is like a general giving the order to attack without needing to explain it to the soldiers. When you stand up and begin your daily routine, whether it's working out, meditating, or reading, while the rest of the world is still asleep, you're not just ticking off a task. You are carving a groove into your brain, deeply affirming that you are someone who keeps their promises. The feeling of victory as you watch the sun rise, knowing you've just defeated the monster of laziness, becomes the strongest foundation for inner peace throughout the rest of your day. Now, let's shift to another scenario to illustrate the law of strategic restraint, a more subtle dimension of Stoicism. Imagine you're in an important meeting at work or simply at a family dinner. Suddenly, someone throws out a cutting remark aimed directly at your competence or your dignity. Maybe they criticize a project you poured your heart into, or they bring up an old mistake. Instantly, your blood rushes to your face, your heart races, and a surge of chemical reactions explodes in your brain, urging you to strike back. Your instinct screams that you must defend your honor, that you must say something sharp and hurtful to get even, to prove them wrong and yourself right. This is the trap of emotion, where most people fall and lose emotional control. What does someone who has mastered the law of strategic restraint do? They activate an invisible pause button. Instead of letting words burst out as a knee-jerk reaction, they take a deep breath and step back mentally. They observe their anger like a person standing on the riverbank watching wild waves crash by, rather than jumping into the torrent and getting swept away. In those few brief but precious seconds of silence, that moment of stillness, they analyze the situation. They recognize that reacting in anger only proves that the other person's words have hit a weak spot If they blow up, they are handing control of their emotions over to someone else. Instead, they choose silence or a calm response that is almost unsettling. For example, instead of shouting, "You're wrong," they calmly ask, "What makes you see it that way?" This shift from reflex to response is quiet power. It's like a massive rock in the middle of a raging stream. The water, criticism, chaos, has no choice but to split and flow around it, while the rock remains unmoved. When you do this, you'll notice the other person becomes confused. They came for a fight, but you handed them stillness. That is the moment you reclaim all your power and display a level of personal growth that words can't fully describe. A deeper, more symbolic metaphor to connect these two laws is the image of a ship captain navigating a vessel across a vast ocean. The ocean is life itself, full of unpredictable events, storms, rough waves, or scorching days under the sun. The ship is you. The law of inner command is the captain's firm hand on the wheel, holding tight to the chosen course, your long-term vision, even when the crew, your emotions, are seasick, terrified, or begging to turn back. He doesn't steer the ship based on whether the sea is calm today. He steers based on the destination. Meanwhile, the law of strategic restraint is the sturdy hull of the ship. When big waves, adversity, provocation, crash against its sides, the ship doesn't try to throw water back at the ocean. It endures, it absorbs the impact, and it glides through. It doesn't allow the water to flood into the engine room. If the ship lets water, external negativity, pour inside, it will sink. In the same way, if you allow criticism and chaos from the outside world to seep into your mind, you will lose your balance. Applying these two real-life examples to your own journey requires that you accept a hard truth. Control your emotions and self-discipline are not pleasant experiences at the beginning. There will be discomfort when you force yourself out of bed early. There will be intense unease when you swallow your anger. But it is precisely that friction that polishes the gem. Every time you defeat drowsiness, every time you smile in the face of provocation, you are laying another solid brick in the fortress of your inner world. Gradually, these actions stop feeling like a struggle and start becoming your second nature, your true self. That is when discipline transforms into freedom, and you truly become the supreme architect of your own destiny. If the law of inner command and the law of strategic restraint are the sword and shield that help you win individual battles, then the next two laws we're about to explore are the very foundation on which you build an unshakable empire. A single victory, no matter how glorious, is only a brief flash of light if it lacks consistency. To transform self-discipline from a forced action into a natural way of living, we need the law of sacred routine. When we hear the word routine, the modern mind often pictures boredom, repetition, and a lack of creativity. We're drawn to what is new, disruptive, and spontaneous. However, in the philosophy of those who seek self-mastery, routine is not a prison. It is the key to freedom. Why do we call it sacred? Because when an action is repeated over and over, with mindfulness and deep respect for yourself, it stops being a chore. It becomes a ritual. The law of sacred routine defines discipline as something that doesn't arise from sudden bursts of inspiration, but from consistent repetition. It is the art of bringing order out of chaos. Look at your life. An endless stream of noisy information, demands from other people, and unpredictable changes. Without a solid daily routine as an anchor, you will be swept away by that current, drifting aimlessly and losing your inner peace. A sacred routine is when your daily actions are perfectly aligned with the core values you are committed to. It works like a filter, removing the mental noise and preserving the purity of your focus. When you design a standard daily process, like reading every morning, journaling every evening, or dedicating 1 hour to deep work, you are freeing your brain from the burden of constantly having to decide. You no longer need to ask, "What should I do today?" or "When should I start?" This automation preserves your precious mental energy, allowing you to pour your strength into the quality of your actions instead of wasting it on the struggle just to begin. Beyond that, the law of sacred routine completely dissolves the conflict between motivation versus discipline. Motivation is a seductive traitor. It shows up when life feels good and disappears when things get hard. But routine is fiercely loyal. It is the backbone that keeps you standing upright, even when your spirit wants to collapse. Aristotle once distilled a powerful truth. We are what we repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence is not an act, but a habit. By honoring your small daily rituals, you are quietly constructing a new identity. You don't just do discipline, you become discipline. However, setting up a routine is only the first step. The real test, the merciless filter that separates dreamers from achievers, lies in the next law, the law of enduring strength. If the law of sacred routine is drawing the map, then the law of enduring strength is the act of walking across the desert. Starting something new always feels exciting. The dopamine in your brain spikes, and you feel like you could conquer the world. But after a few weeks or months, the novelty fades. The excitement disappears. What's left is boredom, fatigue, and results that still haven't fully shown up. This is the abyss where most people quit. The law of enduring strength defines strength not as the ability to lift a heavy weight once and drop it to applause. Real strength is the ability to keep that weight on your shoulders and keep walking, mile after mile, day after day, when no one is watching and no one is cheering. It is a form of quiet power, a silent, unshowy force that is incredibly formidable. In Stoic thinking, endurance is considered a noble virtue. It demands that we separate our actions from the craving for instant recognition. Modern society trains us to expect immediate rewards. You post a picture and you want likes. You do some work and you want a bonus right away. But this law teaches us about long-term vision. It reminds us that the greatest treasures of personal growth, like wisdom, calmness, or a strong, healthy body, follow the rule of compound interest. They accumulate painfully slowly at first and only explode into visible results after a long period of consistent investment. True self-discipline, from the perspective of the law of enduring strength, is the ability to maintain your commitment even when you feel lost, exhausted, and doubtful of yourself. It's when you still sit down at your desk even though you have no ideas. Still go to the gym even when it's pouring rain. Still treat others with kindness even while your inner world is storming. This endurance doesn't come from rigidly gritting your teeth, but from acceptance. Accepting that discomfort and boredom are inevitable parts of the journey, just as friction is necessary to create fire. Another profound dimension of the law of enduring strength is the ability to stand firm in the absence of visible results. Many people abandon self-mastery because they don't see change overnight. But those who understand this law know that bamboo spends years growing roots underground before it shoots up meters into the sky in just a few weeks. That silent time is not dead time. It is the time when inner power is being stored. When you combine the law of sacred routine with the law of enduring strength, you create an automatic operating system for your life. Routine helps you start without effort. Endurance helps you continue when everything becomes difficult. This is where mental strength reaches its peak. You no longer depend on the weather, your mood, or the praise and criticism of others. You become a machine powered by inner values. This combination is also an antidote to anxiety. When you know you have a routine, a process, and you know you have the ability to sustain it, endurance, you naturally worry less about the future. You begin to trust the process. You find refuge in the act of showing up today. That is the state of stillness in motion. On the outside, you are working relentlessly. But on the inside, your mind is absolutely calm because you know you are moving in the right direction. In the end, these two laws remind us that life is not measured by the dazzling moments on the mountaintop, but by the quiet steps taken in the valleys of perseverance. To control your emotions and take ownership of your life, you don't need to be a superhero. You just need to be an ordinary person with extraordinary consistency. It is the courageous repetition of small actions, day after day, that will sculpt the monument of a human being who cannot be defeated. To truly feel the weight of the law of sacred routine and the law of enduring strength, we need to step away from abstract concepts and walk into a more tangible space. The workspace of a professional writer, or the quiet training ground of an elite athlete. Imagine a great writer. Most of us romanticize their work, picturing those magical moments of genius when inspiration flows like a spring and masterpieces are written in a single sleepless night. But reality is far more raw and brutal than that. If you were to observe a real writer, you would see a daily routine so boring, it's almost unbelievable. They don't sit around waiting for the muse to knock on the door. They sit at their desk at exactly 8 a.m. every day, regardless of whether they slept well the night before, regardless of whether they feel excited or depressed. The law of sacred routine shows up right here in the simple act of sitting down in that chair. There are days when they can only produce meaningless sentences, paragraphs even, they want to throw away. But they don't get up. They don't quit to scroll social media looking for instant comfort. They honor this process like a religious ritual. It is this steady repetition that creates order, a sense of stillness in the mind, helping them detach from the chaos of daily life and maintain absolute focus. They understand that professionalism is not measured by the quality of their best days, but by their willingness to show up on their worst days. Now apply this to your own life. Let's say you want to build a business or learn a new skill. At the beginning, excitement, the thing we often mistake for self-discipline, will push you to work 14 hours a day. But after 2 weeks, the novelty fades. Problems begin to appear. This is where the law of sacred routine needs to be activated. You establish a non-negotiable process, 60 minutes every morning dedicated to learning, no matter what excuse appears. This action, small and quiet as it may seem, is actually a vote cast for the new person you are becoming. You're no longer someone who just wants to succeed. You are behaving like someone who succeeds. However, maintaining a routine for a short period of time is one thing. Keeping it alive over the years is the domain of the law of enduring strength. To illustrate this law, there is no image more powerful than the story of the stonecutter that Jacob Riis once described, a story steeped in the spirit of Stoicism. Picture a stonecutter standing in front of a massive boulder. He swings his hammer and strikes the stone. Once, twice, 10 times. Nothing happens. The boulder remains there, solid, unchanged, cold, and defiant. He keeps striking, up to the 100th blow. Still no visible sign of change. An impatient observer would assume he's wasting his time, that this effort is hopeless. They would advise him to give up or find an easier shortcut, but the stonecutter, with his mental strength and calm determination, keeps swinging. On the 101st strike, the boulder suddenly splits in two. The question is, was it the 101st blow that broke the stone? Of course not. The split is the result of all 100 blows before it. Those seemingly invisible efforts that produced no immediate result, but were quietly breaking down the internal structure of the rock. This is the essence of personal growth and the law of enduring strength. On the journey of self-development, we often fall into the valley of disappointment. This is the stage where you strictly follow your diet, but the scale doesn't move. You practice a foreign language every day, but still can't speak fluently. You work hard, but don't get promoted. During this period, self-doubt wraps itself around you. You start asking whether you're on the right path, whether the price you're paying for self-mastery is simply too high. If you rely on motivation, you will quit right in this valley. But if you possess long-term vision and understand the stonecutter's law, you will keep swinging the hammer. You know that change is taking place quietly beneath the surface. You are accumulating inner strength. You are building a foundation of inner peace that no storm can topple. This silent persistence, needing no witnesses and no applause, is the highest expression of quiet power. Another hauntingly powerful image of this strength is the bamboo tree. When a bamboo seed is planted, the farmer must water and fertilize it every single day. For the first 4 years, nothing appears above the ground. Not a single shoot. Absolute stillness. Someone without discipline and vision would assume the seed has died and stop caring for it. But the patient farmer continues the same boring work, day after day. Then, in the 5th year, the bamboo breaks through the soil. In just 6 weeks, it shoots up to 90 feet tall, almost 30 meters. The bamboo did not grow in 6 weeks. It grew over 5 years. During those 5 years, it was building a vast, intricate root system beneath the ground to support its massive height later on. If it rose too early without solid roots, without the foundation of the law of enduring strength, the first strong wind would knock it down. We are the same. During those phases when you feel like you're stuck in place, when life seems unfair because it hasn't rewarded you yet, remember, that is when you are growing your roots. That is when you are learning to control your emotions, learning to endure the loneliness of discipline. The law of enduring strength teaches us this. Don't wish for an easy life. Wish for the strength to endure a difficult one. When you combine these two images, the steadfast stonecutter and the deeply rooted bamboo, you see the full picture of self-discipline. There is no magic. There are only small actions, repeated in a sacred way, sustained by an iron will over a long period of time. It is within this boring repetition that the true miracle occurs. You transform from someone controlled by emotions into someone who controls their destiny. You are no longer afraid of waiting, because you know that every disciplined moment is bringing you closer to the highest version of yourself. That is a quiet, unshakable confidence, an inner peace that nothing in this world can buy. We've already built a solid foundation together by establishing inner command, sharpening restraint, and strengthening endurance through sacred habits. However, to complete the picture of a person with full self-mastery, we need to go deeper, to the innermost layer of the mind. How we handle primitive impulses, how we manage our finite energy, and how we direct the course of our life. These final 3 laws, controlled impulse, energy preservation, and disciplined vision, are the most delicate pieces that transform self-discipline from a single action into a peak way of living. Let's begin with the law of controlled impulse. This is perhaps the most brutal battlefield for the modern human. In the digital age, we live inside an economy of attention and stimulation. Every notification on your phone, every clickbait headline, every ad is carefully engineered to strike directly at the amygdala, the primitive part of the brain responsible for the fight or flight response. They trigger instant impulses, pushing us to react, to click, to buy, or to explode in anger. Without the law of controlled impulse, you become a puppet pulled by external strings, losing all self-control and inner peace. This law does not teach you to become an emotionless stone. Stoicism has never advocated for killing emotion. Instead, it teaches us a powerful concept: the gap. Between any stimulus, an insult, a craving, a failure, and your response, there is always a space, however small. Inside that fragile space lies the greatest human freedom. The law of controlled impulse is the art of stretching that space. When you practice this law, you learn to observe emotions rising inside you without becoming them. You notice anger flaring up, but you are not that anger. You notice desire clawing at you, but you are not that desire. This separation allows reason to step in on time. Instead of reacting like a machine, you make a conscious choice based on your core values. This is the pinnacle of emotional control. You do not deny your humanity, but you refuse to let your lower instincts drive your life. When you master even your smallest impulses, you begin to accumulate a kind of quiet power that others deeply respect. The power of someone who cannot be provoked. Right after mastering impulse control comes a law that is vital for both performance and happiness: the law of energy preservation. Imagine your mental energy and willpower as a battery with a limited charge each day. Our biggest mistake is assuming we're exhausted because we work too much. In reality, most of us are drained because we let our energy leak through invisible cracks. Every time you argue pointlessly on social media, every time you worry about something you cannot control, every time you let your mind wander into comparison and envy, you are burning through precious units of energy that should have been invested in personal growth. The law of energy preservation demands a necessary ruthlessness in how you allocate attention. Focus is not just the ability to concentrate on one thing. More importantly, it is the ability to say no to 1,000 other things pulling at you. Stoics constantly ask themselves, is this essential? If the answer is no, they cut it out of their mind immediately. This law teaches us to treat our energy as something sacred. You wouldn't throw money out the window, so why would you throw away your peace of mind on meaningless drama? Preserving energy is the highest act of self-respect. It creates a mental space, an inner stillness, where wisdom and creativity can grow. When you stop caring about what lies outside your control, you suddenly have more than enough strength to change what is within your reach. That is when mental strength is fully optimized. You no longer fight on every battlefield. You only fight the battles that truly matter. Finally, all this effort to control and preserve energy becomes meaningless without a guiding compass. The law of disciplined vision. Discipline without direction is like sprinting in pitch-black darkness. You may be giving everything you've got, sweating and bleeding, but you might be running straight toward a cliff. Many people fall into the trap of busyness. They are proud of how hard they work, yet feel empty inside. That's because they lack a long-term vision. The law of disciplined vision redefines our relationship with hardship. Human beings can endure almost any pain, as long as that pain has meaning. When you have a clear vision of who you want to become and the legacy you want to leave behind, discipline stops being a punishment. It becomes an offering. Vision here is not about shallow goals like making a lot of money or becoming famous. It must be a vivid, emotionally charged image of the best version of yourself. When this vision is big enough, It acts like a magnet, pulling you past cheap temptations. At this point, the debate between motivation versus discipline ends. You no longer need motivation to push you from behind, because your vision is pulling you forward from ahead. This law helps you redefine sacrifice. Saying no to an all-night party is not losing joy. It is protecting your clarity for tomorrow's creative work. Waking up early is not torturing your body. It is claiming sacred time to develop your mind. Long-term vision shines a light onto your present actions, turning dry effort into bricks that build the cathedral of your life. When you combine all three of these laws, you witness a profound transformation. The law of controlled impulse helps you win each present moment by creating distance from your instincts. The law of energy preservation helps you manage your resources so you can stay in the fight for the long haul. And the law of disciplined vision gives you the reason, the great why, to keep going. These are not separate theories. They blend into one ecosystem of self-discipline. A person who embodies all three radiates a unique presence. They are not loud, not frantic, not easily provoked. They move through life with the certainty and calm of a mountain. They know who they are, they know what they must do, and most importantly, they know where they are going. That is the highest level of conscious living, where each passing day is not a drift, but a steady step toward completeness. We've now clearly defined the final three laws: controlled impulse, energy preservation, and disciplined vision. But for these laws to truly matter, they can't remain dry concepts on paper. We need to see them come alive in the most ordinary moments of life, in the very places where self-discipline collides head-on with chaos. Let's start with a scenario every one of us faces dozens of times a day, to illustrate the law of controlled impulse. Imagine you're sitting at your desk, trying to stay deeply focused on your work. Suddenly, your phone buzzes. A notification from social media, a new email, or a message in a group chat. Immediately, a jolt of electricity runs down your spine. That's the craving for dopamine, pushing you to grab your phone and check it right away. This is the moment where impulse is in control. Most people surrender to this reflex without even realizing it. And then 30 minutes later, find themselves scrolling through meaningless videos, having completely lost their flow. But what does someone who practices Stoicism and lives by the law of controlled impulse do? They notice the vibration. They feel the urge to reach for the phone. But they don't move. They create a deliberate pause. They tell themselves, I will check it, but not now. I'll check it after I finish this task in 20 minutes. This act of delaying gratification seems small, but it carries enormous symbolic weight. It's like training a wild animal. The first time the animal growls, that's the discomfort in your mind. But over time, it learns to lie still and obey its master. When you refuse to let a phone notification pull your strings, you are asserting the power of self-mastery. This is the clearest expression of quiet power. The ability to sit still and keep working while the rest of the world spins in circles chasing external stimulation. Next, let's walk into an example of the law of energy preservation, a powerful lesson in managing your mental resources. Imagine you start your day with an energy budget of 100 gold coins. Each coin represents your capacity to focus, to create, and to be patient. You open social media and see a post with a political view you strongly disagree with, or a misinformed comment that gets under your skin. Instantly, you dive into an argument. You type long replies, your heart beats faster in anger, and you try hard to prove that the stranger is wrong. The debate drags on for 30 minutes and goes nowhere. Congratulations. You've just thrown 40 of your gold coins out the window. Then you get to the office and hear a nasty rumor about a coworker. You spend another 30 minutes gossiping, speculating, and worrying about office politics you cannot control. There goes another 30 coins. By the time you finally sit down to work on your most important project, the one that would actually contribute to your personal growth, you're left with only 30 coins. You feel exhausted. Your brain stalls and you can't maintain focus. You wonder why you're performing so poorly when you haven't really done that much. Someone who understands the law of energy preservation behaves completely differently. They see the provocative post. They feel the urge to respond. But then they immediately ask themselves, is this within my control? Will winning this argument bring me inner peace or help me move toward my life goals? The answer is no. So they scroll past it. They don't let a single energy coin fall into those emotional black holes. They guard their budget fiercely so they can spend all 100 coins on their family, their health, and their work. This selective indifference is the highest expression of mental strength. Finally, to illustrate the law of disciplined vision, let's look at the difference between two people doing the exact same thing. Running on a freezing winter morning. The first person runs on a whim. They watched a motivational video last night and decided that today is the day they'll change. But when the cold wind slaps their face and then their legs start to ache, the question creeps into their mind, why am I doing this to myself? Because there is no satisfying answer, they stop. Motivation burns out, and discipline collapses because it has nothing solid to stand on. The second person is running in the same weather, enduring the same physical pain. But in their mind, a completely different movie is playing. They're not running just to lose weight or to show off. They're running because they have a clear long-term vision. They see themselves 5 years from now as someone with incredible endurance. A strong parent who can play with their kids without losing breath. A resilient leader whose mental toughness was forged through hardship. Every painful step is not viewed as torture, but as an investment into that vision. The physical pain becomes meaningful. That vision transforms suffering into pride. They no longer need discipline to force themselves. They are pulled forward by their vision. Think of the medieval cathedral builders. One worker, when asked what he was doing, answered with boredom, "I'm laying bricks. It's a dull job." But another worker, doing the exact same task, replied with shining eyes, "I'm building the house of God." The actions are identical, but the difference in vision created two completely different ways of living. The second worker possesses disciplined vision. When you put all three of these examples together, you see the portrait of a truly free human being. They are not controlled by their phone, controlled impulse. They are not drained by petty drama, energy preservation. And they never feel lost, because they are always guided by the lighthouse of their life, disciplined vision. They live in a noisy world, yet carry within them a strange stillness. It's not apathy, it's extreme focus. They understand that to achieve self-mastery, they must learn to say no to 1,000 good things in order to say yes to a few great things. These examples show that to control your emotions and be disciplined is not the final destination. It is the vehicle that allows you to live a complete life without regret and full of dignity. We've just walked together through a long journey of thought. From decoding the hidden laws of the mind to contemplating ancient philosophies on inner strength. However, all beautiful theories will remain lifeless words on a page if they are not transformed into concrete action. As the Stoic philosophers often reminded us, don't talk about what a good person should be one. Now is the time for us to step down from the mountaintop of reflection into the valley of real life, where the dust, noise, and pressures of the 21st century are waiting. The most important question now is this: how do we apply these 7 laws of self-discipline to a busy life, where your mental strength is constantly tested by work deadlines, family responsibilities, and the invasion of technology? We're not going to build a far-fetched plan. We're going to design a life operating system based on Stoicism and behavioral psychology, helping you gradually reclaim control and achieve self-mastery. 1. Establish the victory hour, applying the law of inner command and sacred routine. The battle for control of your day begins the moment you open your eyes. In the modern world, most people start their day in a reactive state. They turn off the alarm and immediately grab their phone. This action is the same as opening the door and letting the entire world rush into your bedroom. Negative news, work emails, the glamorous lives of others on social media. You let the outside world shape your emotions and focus before you've even brushed your teeth. This is a failure of self-discipline right at the starting line. Change this script by applying the law of inner command and the law of sacred routine. Set a non-negotiable rule. The first 60 minutes of your day are a technology-free zone. This is your victory hour. In this hour, do actions that nourish inner peace and warm up your willpower engine. First, small win. Make your bed immediately after you wake up. Admiral William McRaven of the U.S. Navy said this simple act sends a signal to your brain that you've already completed the first task of the day. It creates momentum for the tasks that follow. Connect with your body. Spend 10-15 minutes moving. It doesn't have to be an intense workout, just enough to wake up your body. This is when you tell your body, I am in command and we are moving. Active stillness. Spend 5 to 10 minutes in stillness. You can meditate or simply sit quietly, drink tea, and look out the window without thinking about your to-do list. This is when you recharge your inner quiet power. When you step out of this victory hour, you are no longer a leaf blown around by the wind. You step into your day as someone proactive, ready to face anything without losing your balance. 2. Build a focus fortress at work, applying the laws of energy preservation and controlled impulse. The modern workplace is the #1 enemy of deep focus. Our time is shredded by pointless meetings, constant group chat messages, and the pressure to respond instantly. This is where the law of energy preservation must be applied ruthlessly. You need to understand that mental energy is finite. To preserve it, practice deep work combined with the law of controlled impulse. Set digital boundaries. Turn off all non-urgent notifications. Designate specific time blocks to check email, for example, 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. When the impulse to check your phone arises, remember the gap between stimulus and response. Tell yourself, I will check it, but not now. Single tasking. Multitasking is a productivity lie. It only drains your energy and increases anxiety. Commit to doing one thing at a time. When you are writing a report, just write the report. When you are in a meeting, just be in the meeting. This full presence is a refined form of discipline. This way, you don't just finish work faster and at a higher quality, but more importantly, you end the workday without feeling completely drained. You still have energy left for your family and personal passions, and that is sustainable personal growth. The art of mindful communication, applying the law of strategic restraint. In relationships, from family to coworkers, the law of strategic restraint is the key to maintaining respect and harmony. We more often regret the words we said in anger than the ones we held back. Bring Stoic thinking into your conversations. When someone provokes you or expresses a conflicting opinion, instead of reacting defensively right away, practice the Stoic pause. Take a deep breath. In that moment, ask yourself, will my reaction help solve the problem, or just satisfy my ego? Learn to listen more than you speak. Calm, composed silence sometimes has more persuasive power than 1,000 argumentative words. When you don't let emotions drive your words, when you control your emotions, you become a steady anchor for others. People will come to you not because you are the loudest, but because you are the clearest and calmest. That is the power of strategic restraint in a noisy world. 4. Evening ritual. Auditing the soul, applying disciplined vision and enduring strength. The end of the day is not the time to completely surrender to passive entertainment. It is a golden moment to strengthen your mental strength through the law of disciplined vision. Like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, spend 10 minutes before bed journaling or reflecting on your day. But don't turn it into a courtroom where you judge yourself. Look at it objectively. Where did I fail in keeping discipline today? Why? No self-condemnation, just analysis. Which impulses did I overcome today? Acknowledge them to reinforce your inner motivation. Did today's actions move me closer to my long-term vision? This helps you close the day in a complete way and prepare your mindset for tomorrow. You go to sleep with a clear head and a clear direction for the next day. That's how you sustain the law of enduring strength, steadiness over the years. 5. The Stoic Kaizen strategy. Start small to go far. A common mistake when approaching a disciplined lifestyle is the ambition to change everything at once. You want to wake up early, hit the gym, diet, read books, and quit social media all on the first day. The result is usually exhaustion and quitting after 3 days. This collapse makes you lose faith in self-discipline. Remember, discipline is a muscle, and it must be trained gradually. Apply the philosophy of Kaizen, continuous improvement, combined with endurance. Don't try to become a perfect Stoic sage overnight. Start with micro changes that are small but consistent, your daily routine. If you can't wake up at 5 a.m. yet, start by waking up 15 minutes earlier than usual. If you can't meditate for 30 minutes, start with 2 minutes of quiet sitting. If you can't quit social media completely, start by not using your phone during meals. Strength does not lie in intensity, but in consistency. Each small victory is a brick that builds your self-respect and belief in your ability to achieve self-mastery. When you keep small promises to yourself, you are accumulating capital to fulfill bigger ones. 6. Relating this to the digital age, reclaiming freedom. We live in a paradoxical era. We have more tools for connection than ever in history, yet we feel more lonely and lost than ever. We have access to all human knowledge, yet our ability to focus is worse than a goldfish's. Applying the 7 laws of self-discipline is an act of resistance against the mental erosion of the digital age. When you choose to read a deep book instead of scrolling 15-second videos, you are training disciplined vision. When you choose to meet friends in person and put your phone away, you are practicing energy preservation. When you choose not to join a mob attacking someone online, you are expressing strategic restraint. This is not about rejecting modern life and living like an ancient person. It's about using technology as a servant to your purpose instead of letting it enslave your mind. That is true freedom. A person with inner peace and discipline in the digital world is like a solid rock in a flood. Water keeps rushing past, but the rock stays where it is, shaping the current instead of being swept away by it. Application summary, finally. Imagine a typical day of yours after applying these principles. In the morning, you wake up with a clear sense of purpose, not groggy and lost. You own your first hour. At work, you are a fortress of focus, solving difficult problems with unusual calm. When trouble or conflict shows up, you don't explode. You handle it with the wisdom of someone who knows how to control your emotions. In the evening, you look back on your day with satisfaction, knowing you have moved one step further on your journey of personal growth. This is not an austere, joyless life. It is a radiant life, full of strength and meaning. It is the life of someone who possesses quiet power. And the good news is that life is completely within your reach, beginning with the very next small decision you make after this video. Don't wait for tomorrow. Discipline starts right now. However, it would be a huge omission, and honestly, a lack of integrity, if we ended this journey without courageously looking straight at the shadows, the real-world challenges, and even the sharp criticisms aimed at this stoic, highly disciplined way of living. It's easy to paint a rosy picture of self-discipline. Living it is a very different story. One of the most common criticisms directed at Stoicism and the practice of emotional control is the fear that it turns people into cold machines, emotionless statues that deny their own humanity. Critics argue that life needs intense vibrations, explosive emotional moments, whether of deep sorrow or ecstatic joy. They claim that constantly controlling and restraining oneself leads to a numb soul, making us lose the ability to connect deeply with others. This is a perspective worth pondering. If control your emotions is misunderstood as emotional suppression instead of emotional regulation, it really can lead to negative psychological consequences. Toxic suppression is like compressing a spring too tightly. Eventually, it snaps back with far greater destruction. That's why we must reaffirm that our goal is self-mastery, to gain freedom through mastery, not to lock ourselves inside a prison of harsh austerity. Alongside that, there is a subtle trap called toxic productivity. In the effort to pursue personal growth and maintain a perfect daily routine, many people fall into a pattern of ruthlessly punishing themselves every time they slip up. They become obsessed with optimizing every single minute to the point that they forget how to actually enjoy life. When discipline turns into a tyrant instead of a guide, it steals inner peace rather than bringing it. We need to remember that even the great Stoic masters were still human. There will be days you fail. There will be days laziness wins. What matters is not flawless perfection, but the ability to forgive yourself and return to the path. True mental strength includes compassion for yourself, self-compassion. Another challenge comes from opposing philosophies, such as Taoism with its concept of wu-wei, acting in harmony with the natural flow. If Stoicism is the firmness of a rock blocking the current, then Taoism is the softness of the water gracefully flowing around the rock. Advocates of flexibility argue that trying to impose rigid order and long-term vision onto a chaotic world goes against nature and creates unnecessary tension. They believe quiet power comes more from letting go of control than from trying to hold on to it. So where is the truth? The answer likely lies in a dialectical balance. Discipline without flexibility leads to breaking, like an oak tree snapping in a storm. But flexibility without discipline leads to dissolution, like water overflowing when there are no banks. Mature self-discipline is a blend of both, a solid framework of principles, focus, and vision, paired with softness in how we apply them. We need strictness to begin, but gentleness to sustain. Lastly, the age-old debate of motivation versus discipline also deserves a more nuanced view. Even though we emphasize discipline, we cannot deny the role of inspiration. A life made up only of dry to-do lists, without joy, without spontaneity, would that truly be a life worth living? Stillness and inner peace should not be mistaken for dullness. Discipline should be seen as the foundation of the house, the structure that keeps it standing through storms. But it's emotions, passion, and freedom that become the interior, making the house warm and worth living in. Use discipline to protect your joy, not to kill it. We've now come to the end of our journey decoding the 7 hidden laws of an unshakable inner world. Through each law, from establishing inner command to crafting a disciplined vision, I hope you've begun to see one core truth. Self-discipline is not punishment, nor is it about forcing yourself into a harsh, joyless box. On the contrary, it is the highest form of self-love. Discipline is the only key that unlocks true freedom, a directed freedom where you are no longer a slave to fleeting emotions or the chaos of the outside world. What we've explored about Stoicism, about cultivating mental strength and learning to control your emotions, is not meant to sit on a shelf in your mind. These are survival tools. In a noisy world that is constantly trying to steal your attention, the ability to find inner peace and maintain focus is a superpower. Remember, motivation can get you started, but only discipline will carry you to the finish line. The difference between who you are now and who you want to become lies in the small, daily routine you commit to, especially when no one is watching. Don't let the size of these principles overwhelm you. You don't have to change your entire life overnight. Start with a single brick. Start with one small victory tomorrow morning. Start with one moment of stillness instead of one angry reaction. The journey of personal growth and self-mastery is not a sprint. It is a lifelong marathon that demands long-term vision and compassion for yourself. Finally, hold on to this message. Every time you choose what is hard over what is easy, every time you choose perseverance over giving up, you are building quiet power within yourself. You are carving the monument of your own life, not out of marble, but out of will and action. As Jim Rohn said, discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. That bridge is already there, waiting for you to step onto it. Stand up, take back control, and live the radiant, steady, deeply meaningful life you were always meant to live. If the flame of self-discipline has been lit inside you through this video, don't let it fade out. Turn that inspiration into action immediately. If you're truly ready to take back control and train your mental strength, leave a comment below saying, "I am ready." That is not just a comment, it's your very first oath to yourself. Don't forget to hit subscribe and share this video with those you want to walk beside you on this journey toward inner peace and personal growth. Thank you for listening. Keep your mind steady, and I'll see you in the next video.